watching and hosting coverage of the NBA playoffs, we had some unbelievable games. And so as we get the assembled members of the hashtag crew assembled around me, Hembo is here, Bubba is here, Cam is here. Let me give you my top 5 takes.
Number 5.
Ja Morant is unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. When he went down in game 1, I thought, well, this series is over. They're going to get swept because he won't play again. And if he does, he will be a shell of himself. Well, the Lakers sleepwalked through game 2, so there went the sweep. And then Morant came out to start game 3. And initially, Hembo, did you watch that game?
I did.
I thought, oh, he can't. They got to get him out of there. He can't even play. He can't do anything. He looked so uncomfortable with the ball. And then the game continued. He got himself into it. And in the second half, he played about as well as you can play. Ja Morant is, I don't know what the adjective is. He is incredible to watch.
He scored 24 of his 45 points in the fourth quarter, brought them all the way back in that game. That's already the third time in his playoff career, Greeny, that he has scored 45 points in a game. That's tied for 10th. He's 23 years old.
Yeah.
There are very few players that can just go get a bucket whenever they want, like Ja Morant.
Look, there are a lot of questions surrounding him, legitimately so. If you've read a lot of the reporting before the incident on IG Live, I'm not trying to sweep any of that. These are completely separate issues. You watch the kid play; he is special. I'm not convinced right now that the 2 best guards in the NBA aren't him and De'Aaron Fox. And everyone else you might mention is old. Is the point. Yeah. Everyone else you would put in that category. I mean, Luka Doncic would, if we're including him with them, I guess he's got to be in the conversation. But who are the other young guys that you would even put on his level, on their level?
I mean, do you consider either the Celtics guards?
No, not guards. Not in the classic sense. Like, these guys are your classic guards.
Yeah.
One way or another. They're just spectacular.
He's unbelievable.
Ja Morant was unbelievable.
Number 4.
The Warriors are incredibly lucky. Incredibly. I do not believe they're going to win the championship again this year, as I know a lot of people do. They are so fortunate to have won that game yesterday. And look, if they wind up, if that shot by Harrison Barnes goes in, then we're going to be talking about the timeout they didn't have until the end of time. And the reason they didn't have it, for those of you who didn't see it, Steph Curry pulled a Chris Webber. He calls a timeout they don't have, and it leads to a three-pointer from Sacramento that puts them within 1 at the end. And the reason that they didn't have a timeout, and this was, I don't know, I was sort of almost willing to excuse Steph to a degree and blame the coaching, is that they lost a timeout by challenging a call that they had no chance of overturning. None. And we were all sitting here watching it, and we were all saying, you're going to give up your final timeout for this. It was a challenge they had no chance of winning. So that's the reason they didn't have it. But that's not the only reason that they're lucky. The reason they're lucky is the Kings are so immature. Like, they had so many terrible offensive possessions yesterday. Malik Monk just racing up the floor and throwing up bad shots, taking bad threes with 15 seconds left. Van Gundy was, it wasn't Van Gundy, it was Doris, sorry, was talking about it endlessly during the broadcast. That team with a little more seasoning, the Kings, 2 years from now, would cook Golden State. They would have won this series easily.
You're probably right, but this is the Warriors sort of flexing their championship equity, right? Like, that's a game that a lot lesser teams might have lost.
Yeah, but you're not beating Phoenix in that situation.
Are they beating Sacramento? Are they going to win 2 of the next 3?
I don't think so.
You think they're going to lose 2 of the next 3?
I think Sacramento wins the series, which was my pick before it even began. But even if they don't, then you go on to play the Lakers or Grizzlies. I will take either of those 2 teams against them.
I'm not so sure. I think a problem here is that we're comparing the Warriors to themselves. We're holding this is the reigning champion. So they're definitely not what they were a year ago, for sure. I think we're also a little bit swooned by the fact that the Kings are fast and they're new and they're fresh and they're energetic. I think Golden State still is a legitimate championship contender.
Golden State has won championships because while everyone pays attention to their shooting and their ball movement, they play defense. This team doesn't play defense. I know Sacramento has the number 1 offense in the league, but what are they averaging in this series? Well, are they averaging 120 points?
Yeah, but they're playing so fast, too.
Well, that's how they play.
That is true.
But, I mean, teams have been playing fast since the beginning of time.
But this is the track meet. And I'm not sure how either team in the next round, whoever advances is going to be able to play as fast as either of these teams.
About how, and he brought into the conversation when he said he's the worst superstar that he can think of. He brought into account the fact that Kawhi doesn't really do anything to advance the game, sell the game, promote the game, all the kind of things that come with being a superstar, and that's obviously true. Kawhi Leonard is such an extraordinary player when he plays, but he never plays. Now, the one thing I'm willing to give him, so Jalen Rose sits next to me for NBA Countdown, and one of the things he tells me is if you see Kawhi Leonard away from the court, he walks like a 70-year-old man. He knows Kawhi very well because they both played for Steve Fisher in college, so he's been close to Kawhi since Kawhi was in college at San Diego State. Kawhi's knee is just not right. It's the reason that everything went sour with San Antonio. He felt it was misdiagnosed back then, and he feels it's never been quite right, and whatever it is, it is. But you must never, ever, under any circumstances, say the following words. Well, if Kawhi is going to play all the games, even in the playoffs,
you're done.
I just don't think you should ever count on it again.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean,
would you?
No, because for him, it's not how good, it's how often. And in his case, it's so incredibly infrequently now.
In his case, it's never.
It's almost never.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they ruled him out for games 3 and 4 before they even start.
But here's the other thing. In 2019, the load managing he did in Toronto worked. He was incredibly fresh in the postseason and had one of the top 5 playoff runs of my lifetime. But load management is not a catch-all that always works. I mean, sometimes it hinders your basketball conditioning. And part of me wonders, even though this is not a soft tissue injury, part of me does wonder if Kawhi and if others put more into the regular season, if their body would respond differently. Look, it's a very complicated scientific thing, but I'm not sure that he's getting this thing right personally.
Well, it's you may be right, but that brings us to the fact that everybody is hurt, and that brings us to number two, which is please let Embiid be healthy, because that series could be so good. But the biggest storylines of the NBA playoffs, maybe until yesterday's game was as good as it was, and Saturday night's Laker game perhaps as well at the finish, the biggest storylines have been the officials throwing people out and in other cases not, and then all the injuries. I mean, just look at the superstars that have not played already in the first round of the playoffs. We've had Ja Morant miss games. We've had Joel Embiid miss games. We've had Kawhi and Paul George miss games. It never ends. The superstars and Embiid, please let him be okay by next week, because I know you feel that way because you want the Sixers to win. I don't care who wins between the Sixers and Celtics, but this is a series I'm dying to watch.
Yes, and we need to get Joel Embiid at 100% to get the best series that we possibly can, whether or not you root for the Sixers or not. Here's what I will say, Joel, on behalf of the entire city of Philadelphia. Only fall down when you absolutely must. You're an enormous human being. Every time you fall down, you're risking something. And you're going to get fouled no matter what. You don't have to sell these calls. You're practically Shaq. Stay on your feet, absorb the contact, and if you don't get a call once a quarter, we can deal with it. But ultimately, falling down as often as you are, that is playing as big a role as any in you being as unhealthy at this point of the season as you are.
It would be a basketball tragedy
Oh.
if we don't get to see the Sixers healthy in that series, because Philly-Boston, with all the history, I mean, if you're my age, Philly-Boston evokes unbelievable memories and rivalry, and that just has a chance to be such a good series.
And these playoffs, like you mentioned, are just an absolute war of attrition. Giannis has missed a bunch of time. Tyler Hero is out. Like, the playoffs in the NBA are a marathon. These are best of sevens. Like, you're only as good as how healthy you can be. And just like last year, Joel Embiid missed game 1 and 2 against Miami. That was the Sixers' undoing in that series. Let's just get one run, bro. One run. Stay on your feet and be as healthy as can be.
All right, and then finally, number one. The Knicks could make a run here. And let's lose the music on that. I mean, obviously, we do our show from New York, and it's no secret that I grew up a season ticket holder to the Knicks, and they've always been, you know, that's my team in that sport, and it has been almost impossible to maintain any enthusiasm for them over the last 20 years because they've been so bad and in so many ways so there's just been sort of a lack of likability and accountability around them. But they've now erased both of those. They've now managed to become not only good, but actually an easy team to root for. And the reason they are where they are in this series against Cleveland, which is up 3-1, is because of the trade they didn't make. Now, in the long run, and I asked Stephen A. about this on TV today, would you be better off having Donovan Mitchell than having a lot of the depth that has propelled them to where they are in this series? And the answer is probably yes. Stephen A. said yes, and he's probably right. In the long run, having a player the caliber of Mitchell, forget about yesterday. He had a terrible day. Donovan Mitchell's a great player. Why did you shake your head like that? You don't think he's a great player?
I mean, he's a great player. You could have even argued that he's first-team All-NBA in the regular season.
Right.
But, I mean, how many more of these duds does he need to lay in the playoffs before we start to work off? Like, I'm not sure a superstar would have done that. That's the team that you wanted to play for, that didn't trade for you. Greeny, he had 5 assists, made 5 shots, and had 6 turnovers in a game they had to have.
Yeah.
That's not what a superstar does.
No, he had a terrible day. But let's put that aside. The larger issue is here. The Knicks are where they are in that series because of the people they didn't trade for him. And so I think that's an interesting storyline here. And look, every now and again, fortune smiles upon you. And while no one wants to see Giannis be significantly hurt here, the question is, if Giannis isn't really able to play, that's a toss-up between Milwaukee and Miami. If the Knicks, assuming they win this series, if they get the Heat, I think the Knicks are going to the conference final. I really do. As ridiculous as it sounds, I think there are going to be 2 teams left in the East, either Boston or Philly, and the Knicks. I mean, who among us could have imagined I'd be saying that out loud? But I think it could happen.
I'm looking at our analytics site right now, and right now ESPN says, our analytics, our numbers say the likeliest Eastern Conference final is Knicks-Celtics.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.